Sexy names in the fantasy game don't come much more attractive than a good fantasy hockey sleeper. And Steele and I, on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, have a whole handful for you to dive into. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, my fantasy fanatics? Welcome back inside the lab to your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey. We are trying to get you guys to the top of the table in whatever league you will be running. And with fantasy draft season approaching, Mr. Roden, we're getting very serious on today's show about fantasy hockey sleepers. And honestly, it is one of those terms in the fantasy game that piques your interest, attention, or whatever you want to say. And it will be essential to you dominating your draft. Being able to peg a player that maybe someone else is sleeping on or overlooking, Steele, that might not be getting all of the attention that they should be. We've got a whole bunch of players. I had a massive list, but over to you. We shortened it up. A lot of attractive names here, Mr. Roden, and I'm excited to hear who you're looking at.
Yeah, I got a big list myself, a lot of players I want to talk about, and a little bit of a theme from where I'm looking at this perspectively on today's episode for sleeper picks. A theme, this is a strategy that I would employ everyone to use going into this draft. And again, when you look at the draft board, where to find value, especially in those later rounds, some guys that your league mates might be sleeping on. And I want to start off with Mathew Barzal of the New York Islanders. I think this is a player where you can still find a ton of value. And again, I have a theme going in this episode with these sleeper picks. Matt Barzal, who has dual eligibility, he has that center and right wing position. Obviously, his rookie year, career high 85 points back in 2017, 2018. However, he just had another season of 80 plus points 2 years ago. So when this guy's fully healthy, he brings the value. He has a high ceiling as an elite playmaker. He averages over 19 minutes of average ice time. And when he possesses the puck, he drives that possession with his elite zone entries. And he's one of the best players on east to west skating ability in the National Hockey League. And again, when he's fully healthy, he has that chemistry with Bo Horvat. You bring in a guy like Jonathan Drouin, who also has some injury concern, but a lot of speed on that wing as well. Horvat's a finisher. Barzal is a creator. I think that is a dangerous duo right there. And obviously this Islanders team is not really going to be good, but there is a sleeper angle, especially when you look at what Barzal brings to the power play and the man advantage for this team as well. We all know last year that the Islanders had one of the worst power plays in the league at 12.5%. And just 2 years ago, when Barzal was healthy, while the power play wasn't great, it was a lot better than last year when they were rocking at 20.7% on the power play. So if that power play can start clicking a little bit more, start rotating, start creating some offensive momentum, especially on the man advantage, I like Matt Barzal, especially for where he's going right now with an average draft position of 145.
Seeing where some of your names are up on the graphic here, I like what's happened. You and I didn't even plan this. I think I went for some deeper cuts, some deeper sleepers, and you have gone with some really good players that have shown out at, I'm just talking about Zibanejad and Barzal, for example, at the top of your list here, which I like both of those guys. I think these are a very nice mix of players. I'm with you here on this Barzal take because I think people will be overlooking him. So I think he fits the mold nicely. You mentioned the concerns with the Islanders, though. Last year, only the Flames, Ducks, Preds, and Sharks, 4 teams that struggled mightily to score goals, scored less than the New York Islanders. So that comes with that inherent risk of drafting this player. I think, though, Steele, this is a guy that, just like you said, his skating ability creates chances for himself and his line mates. And if he's healthy, that alone, to me, let alone his skill set and offensive flair at times, that skating ability is elite. So can he stay healthy? Big question mark at times, but I like it for this season. I did have an honorable mention for a name that I keep reading about. St. Louis Blues let go a player that I'm going to talk about in a bit, about Zachary Bolduc, who's a really good player because they have a young guy on the come up in Jimmy Snuggerud, and he is a really good young player, Steele. And I'm telling you, 4 points in 7 games last year isn't a lot to go on. And like I said, I've gone a more of a deeper route with these sleepers. And, I did do a little lookup on all of these guys' rankings on both Matt Larkin's 300 and NHL.com's 200. Snuggerud, 182 on NHL.com, 194 on Matt Larkin's. Prototypical deep sleeper here, Steele. I don't know if I'm comfortable drafting him. A lot of these guys were obviously drafting. Snuggerud might, for me, have to be a stream, a waiver, but I just wanted to throw his name out there before I get to a goaltender to start. Jet Greaves in Columbus, again, small sample size. And, Jonas Korpisalo is obviously still an option there. Sorry, Elvis Merzlikins is still an option there in Columbus, but it's not a good one, is it? Jet Greaves down the stretch, Steele, he was lights out for Columbus. I believe he was 5-1 with a save percentage north of 960. He almost got them into the playoffs. If you're following our boys at Apples and Ginos, this guy is going to show a ton of value in 0G. You can wait and wait and wait. And he is going to get all the opportunity behind a good rising team in Columbus. I think Jet Greaves fits the mold perfectly as a deep sleeper that maybe you take a risk on as your second or third goaltender who becomes a number 1. You're in good shape. Mute's got you, brother.
Absolutely love that you brought up Jet Greaves because I also have him on this list as well. And like you said, small sample size last year, 7-2-2 record in 11 games, a 938 save percentage, a 1.91 goals against average.
Shutouts.
He played really well in the AHL with the Cleveland Monsters as well. Another save percentage above 910 last season, actually the last few seasons. So he's been very consistent. And this team is, we all know, headed in the right direction. When you look at some of their young guys, and I'm actually going to talk about one after this, when you look at Adam Fantilli, when you look at Kirill Marchenko, you bring in the veteran presence, obviously, and a healthy Sean Monahan and Boone Jenner. This team is really solid right now. They just need to find the right goaltender to stay strong and stay tall in the blue paint and give them some sort of reliability that they can pull out some wins, pull out some saves to win these games when they're ever so close right there. So you look at Jet Greaves, he's technical, he's a calm goalie, and doesn't overcommit from what I saw in that small sample size last year. A really good high rebound control. And again, like you said, falls into that 0G strategy, and ADP right now of 186. So if you can get a potential out of nowhere starting late goaltender, it can really swing your fantasy season. And over to my other Columbus Blue Jackets player, it's Adam Fantilli, another center, another young guy with an ADP of 191 right now. Obviously in his rookie year got injured, still put up 27 points in 49 games. He follows that up, doubling his points the year after with 54 in a full 82 game season, 30 plus goal potential, which he did last year as well, 190 plus shots, 16.2 shooting percentage. And he's bringing the physical aspect of 113 hits as well. Yep. And that goes along with exactly what I was talking about with my theme for today's episode with these sleeper picks is you're going to find a lot of value down the middle in that center position. You can wait on guys in Matt Barzal. You can wait on guys in Adam Fantilli, and you can wait on goaltenders in Jet Greaves, and another one that I want to talk about later in this episode. So my strategy going into this year, it's to target the left and right wing positions along with your defensemen, get those set in stone right away, and then you can fall back into these later rounds and start picking up these really great value players down the middle in the center position, and of course on your back end with your goaltenders.
Absolutely well said. I'm going to talk about a couple of centermen coming up after the break. And Steele, honestly, looking at some of these rankings, because all the outlets are putting out their rankings. I saw Bleacher Report Ice put out their top 30 tandems. Another outlet did a top 30 tandems, and they were so different. And it made me realize how much value there is right now in goaltenders, in centermen. So I'd adhere to these strategies. We're here to support you through it, my friends. Also, next week, back to full steam ahead. 5 episodes a week, my friends, Monday through Friday. We'll be dropping them early in the morning. You know what it is. Before we get to the rest of our sleepers, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here. Make sure you're ready for kickoff with the can't miss offer from FanDuel, where new customers bet $5. Your bet hits $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We got the Chiefs and the Chargers in Sao Paulo, Brazil tonight. Still, I'll be sprinkling heavy on Xavier Worthy, and we'll be doing it right here on the FanDuel app in play or otherwise. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app today, right now, by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com, and place your first $5 bet.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review for your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden. Flip, over to you, my friend. Where are you looking at down on the draft board where you can find some value, again, down the middle or even on the blue line?
Yeah, 100%. And that's exactly where I'm looking, is up the middle. 13th overall draft pick from only a couple of years ago, a smallish forward in Frank Nazar, Steel, is starting to catch some attention in deep fantasy formats, and I think for good reason. 26 points in 53 games last year, I believe, is just scratching the surface for this 21-year-old who, yes, he has to make up for his lack of size with a high motor and high energy, and he has that. He has speed as well. Very speedy, shifty forward who will get power play one time because they love putting Bedard on the blue line. So this is the number one power play center in Chicago. Chicago's still going to struggle, but they should be improved, Steel. I really do think that there are some good young pieces coming up here in this system. They got Spencer Knight between the pipes now for a full season. Are they still going to miss the playoffs drastically? Yes, but I think fantasy value is on the rise with Chicago, even incrementally, and in Frank Nazar. This is a guy, Steel, that for me personally, I know that there's not a big sample size here. And I know that 35 block shots and 30 hits in 53 games doesn't jump off the page. But if you expand that to 82, he brings some peripheral value as well. And he had 24 penalty minutes. So expand on that. And maybe he makes a perfect your last centerman, or you take a little flyer on him as your last forward. To me, I see a ton of value in Frank Nazar. Draftable. But I'm talking last pick, and he could explode. That's why I think he's a prototypical sleeper. Caliber's there. Skill is there. Bad team, risky, yes, but he's a sleeper for sure.
Well, clearly the Chicago Blackhawks believe in him as much as you do right now, because they signed him to an incredible 7-year, $40+ million deal. So they believe in him. They're ready to rumble with some of these young guns as well, and hopefully they can give Connor Bedard some help. I'm going to a player that was actually just traded from Chicago to Florida, won a Stanley Cup, and it's Seth Jones on the blue line. I think this guy has 50-point potential this upcoming year. This is a guy that plays in all facets of the game on the power play number one unit with Aaron Ekblad. Again, you don't see a lot of teams running the two defensemen on the power play, and that could change throughout the season, but he will be getting power play time. He will be getting penalty kill time. He's got a lot more weapons to work with in the offensive group. This is a guy that can put up over 175 plus shots. He can put up over 100 hits, 80 blocks, and he gets over 25 minutes of average ice time. So when I see that his ADP is at 103 right now, this guy is an absolute steal at that value and where he's getting drafted on average. So I like Seth Jones on the back end and what he can bring as well to this Florida Stanley Cup champion team.
Let's also remember that this is one of the most balanced and defensively stingy groups that the NHL has seen in a very long time. So you just get insulated and his value gets propped up by that exact fact. The Florida Panthers allowed the 6th least goals against in the NHL last year at 223. And you know they're going to be running back basically the same lineup. I like this one a lot, Steel. Again, I think you've got the bigger name guys, some sleepers that I think a lot more GMs might be going after like you are. And then I'm bringing you the deeper cuts, but I like it. And Seth Jones, he got overpaid, no doubt. And then he didn't exactly follow up what he had been doing, and he underachieved. That doesn't mean, though, that fantasy value isn't still to be had. So I think one of the main themes that you and I bring up a lot is having to separate the betting angle from how players impact their teams in the standings to what they do to your fantasy team. And I think Seth Jones is a really good case of, sure, he took a lot of heat. He performed poorly for a while, got overpaid. Fantasy value, boom, love it. How about the player that I alluded to a little bit already? I've spoken about him now a lot, Steele. So I'm really hoping that he fits the mold into some of these young guys that I start to fall in love with. Zachary Bolduc with 108 hits last year, a plus 20 rating, 37 PIMs, 19 goals, and 36 points. And he is just 21 years old. And now he gets to return home to Quebec and potentially play, sorry for the phone in the background, with Kirby Dach and Ivan Demidov on the second line and maybe catch some power play 2 time. This is a sleeper that fits the bill so much so that I feel bad about coming on here and tipping my hand, because he is going to catch one of my final couple of draft spots. Will he pan out? Could Patrick Laine eat into his minutes and take that spot on the second line or eat into his power play time? For sure. For now, on paper, you got the peripheral coverage. I love Zachary Bolduc, and he is a prototypical fit in Montreal as well, a hometown boy.
A lot of young guns in Montreal that we're excited to watch this upcoming season. I want to talk about a guy that I've been in love with the last few years. And I know it's not much of a sleeper pick because of where he gets drafted, but I can't come on today's episode and not talk about my boy JT Miller of the New York Rangers. To me,
of course you can't. Of course,
he's still a sleeper pick for a guy that can.
Interesting.
For a guy that has a ceiling of 80, 85 points, and you're telling me I can draft him somewhere in the 3rd or 4th round. I'm jumping all over it every single day. And I'm also going to throw in his line mate, his teammate, Mika Zibanejad, into this mix. So these are two sleeper picks for me. Both guys have dual eligibility on the center and right wing position. Both guys are playing on that second line. Both guys are playing on the first power play unit. And like I said, both guys have a floor of 70 points and a ceiling of 80 to 85 points. They're going to get it done on the power play. And when you look at JT Miller, especially for banger leagues, a guy that can put up 175 plus shots, he can put up 150 plus hits. He's not afraid to get into those dirty areas. He had 55 penalty minutes the last consecutive 3 seasons now. So banger league beauty and JT Miller. Mika Zibanejad, obviously a down year, but I think, again, for both JT Miller getting out of that toxic situation in Vancouver, kind of jumps back in with the New York Rangers where he once was before. I think this is going to be a good season, and a lot of people out there are overlooking this New York Rangers team that have revamped very quickly and efficiently over the last 8 months.
Agree with you there. Agree with you on Zibanejad as a quote-unquote sleeper. I wouldn't put JT Miller into the sleeper mold myself, only because...
Just had to talk about him.
There you go. Okay, I like that you hedged, because 35 points in 32 games after switching back to New York with 76 hits in that time frame, and like you said, finishes with 168 and 70 points in 72 games. To me, I wouldn't call him a sleeper, but I like that you stuck to your guns and you get the JT Miller plugs in whenever you can. I'm saving my favorite player for last, and I'll spit out Shane Wright very quickly, and we can wrap it up after the break. 44 points for me in 79 games last year for Shane Wright, a player that obviously got heavily passed on in his draft considering he was going number 1. He is still fired up about it, Steele. He's proven that he can score at the AHL level. That time is done. He is now an everyday NHL player on this Seattle Kraken team. And when I look at Matty Beniers and I look at Chandler Stevenson, why can't Shane Wright be the number 1 centerman in Seattle? And we have spoken about this team is basically like there is no surefire number 1 line. Schwartz, Beniers, Kakko, Eberle, Stevenson, McCann, Marchment, Wright, and Tolvanen. I could almost say Shane Wright, Marchment, and Tolvanen could be their top line, quote unquote. So I see a whole ton of value in Shane Wright this year. Is he still a young player? Are the Kraken overall a very ho-hum team? Yeah, but he still brought 62 blocks, 54 hits, and his ice time was just 14 minutes a night. That should go up, and I see then why not 55, 60 points from a guy with a really good shot, dominated at junior. Steele, this guy might be my favorite sleeper, if not for a Calgary Flames player that I'd like to talk about after the break. Back on mute.
Always going to get me once a week. See, for me with this player, he fits more into the mold of what we just did in the Minutemen because of him getting 14 minutes. And again, I could see some increase in average ice time for Shane Wright, but the Seattle team it doesn't do it for me. And again, I'm still very hesitant on Matty Beniers. And if that's who you're walking with as your number one centerman right now, it just puts this team in a very tough position to be very strong defensively, which I think they can be with Vince Dunn and Brandon Montour, guys like Adam Larson and Ryan Lindgren, but it just puts more of a load on those guys than what this offensive team is capable of right now. I do like the potential of Shane Wright, so it's something to look forward to in the later stages of your draft. When we come back, we have a Calgary Flames player that Flip is dying to talk about. I have another goaltender that I'm dying to talk about as well. All the sleeper picks you need for this 2025-26 fantasy hockey draft. All of that coming up next. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, share with your friends and family out there. We really do appreciate all that love and support you show us on the channel. Flip, over to you, my friend. Calgary Flames, how you feeling about them, and who is the sleeper pick coming into the season?
You know, I want to say that this is a playoff team. I believe in Dustin Wolf. I think they have a pretty good balanced blue line. And if guys like Matt Coronado and Connor Zary take a step this year, they're going to have a pretty good forward group as well. And if you're not believing in my investment into Matt Coronado, as I think is my favorite sleeper pick, the guy can shoot. He's a really smart player. His metrics are solid. And how about the investment of the Calgary Flames in this player, a tune of 7-year deal and $45 million for a player steal that I think, you know, maybe it was 2 years ago, he had a really good preseason where he shot the lights out. I think that was in the 2023-24 preseason. And he shot the lights out and he looked unreal. And then he had a slow kind of entry into the NHL, 34 games, only 3 goals and 6 assists. He had on 180 shots on net last year, a shooting percentage of just over 13 and 24 goals. And if you're going to believe where he's playing this year in Calgary, with I know you can back me up here where we love Nazem Kadri and a bounce back from Jonathan Huberdeau last year, Matt Coronado should see power play one time in Calgary for sure. That's huge. I could see his minutes going up as well. Now he has the bag secured. Steele, this could be a really, really good pick at the wing position that you can wait on, because other than people tapping into our pod and perhaps some other ones, Matt Coronado absolutely love as a sleeper and just as an overall underrated fantasy asset on the rise.
I think people are always going to be underestimating and overlooking this Calgary Flames team. Like I said the other day, Nazem Kadri, his name has been falling down the draft board significantly. You look at guys like you just mentioned, Matt Coronado. Again, the team, the names on the team don't jump off the page, and that's why they're getting overlooked. But you can still find some hidden value with these players. My last goaltender, my last player I want to talk about is Karel Vamelka of the Utah Mammoth. Again, falls directly into the zero-G strategy. I thought he had a really good season last year, a career-high .904 save percentage, a really good goals against average of 2.58, which is, again, a career high for him. Played 58 games, was 26, 22, and 8 on the season, and had a goals saved above average of 5.9. Again, another career high for him. And with the way this team is really shaping right now, I just like the look of this team. I think Clayton Keller is right there, knocking on the door of superstar potential.
I agree.
Again, I think you could see 90 points from Clayton Keller. I think Logan Cooley has a really good season playing on that top line. Dylan Gunther is going to be the sharpshooter on the right wing side. You bring in JJ Peterka as well, who I actually thought about putting on this list as well as another sleeper pick going into the season. Obviously, some things to continue working on the blue line, but I look at Karel Vamelka, the potential. I watched a lot of Utah Hockey Club games last season. Now the Utah Mammoth, of course, and I just think there's a lot of potential for him to be, again, sort of in that same scenario with Jet Greaves, like finally getting this opportunity. He played well last year in the short stint, especially for Karel Vamelka in those 58 games. I just think, again, falls into that zero-G strategy, ADP around 199, I believe, as well. And a starting goaltender. You don't want to fall back on Vitek Vanacek if you're the Utah Mammoth.
Well said. How about also this team? Really good on the road, Steele. I believe they were like 2016 and something. I just had it up. Sorry, I don't mean to just spit out random numbers. 2016-5. Boom. How's that for your boy? And they had the 10th best power play in the NHL. So if you're talking about a goaltender that we like and a team whose statistics also are starting to point very much in the right direction, they bring in probably one of the sexier young shooters that you and I have spoken about. We had John Madish on from The Score. He talked highly about JJ Peterka's skill set, called him a unicorn. This is a piece added into all of the names that you just mentioned, and they were the 10th best power play last year. I might be going after a few Utah Mammoth, and even though I would have preferred them as the Yeti, I think this is a big year. They've got some good young pieces on the rise as well, prospects or otherwise. Utah will be a good team sooner than later, and I mean playoff good.
They are here and they are ready to rumble. And I'm excited for when we break down these division predictions, because you might be surprised. I might have them there in the playoffs going into this season. It's going to be a dangerous team.
Sounds like a good bet.
I like what they bring in that top 6 group, along with Karel, Vamelka on the back end. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, for your second listen, please make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, because there is no off season. We are still 1 month away, but we bring you the daily league-wide stories that matter the most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On and NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Stay tuned in for Monday's episode. Another Monday mock draft coming up soon.
Peace.